Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about delivering a touchless load today and telling Jordan's story from Zengistics. To get us started, we'll do some quick introductions. So nice to see everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Samantha Foley. At Turvo, I oversee the sales and marketing engine. We are a collaborative TMS provider. Zengistics is one of our customers. So with that, Jordan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jordan Barrett. I'm the Senior Director of IT for Zengistics and been with Zen for coming up on 8 years now and have handled everything top to bottom from integrations to implementations, process engineering, the whole works.
Awesome. I'm also joined by Jesse Buckingham, the founder over at Vooma. Jesse, I'll let us tell you a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to see everyone. My name's Jesse. I'm one of the co-founders of Vooma. Vooma is a quote-to-cash orchestration platform where we build AI workers that sit alongside reps to be able to automate tasks from quoting to load building, scheduling, covering loads, and track and trace, all to help brokers win and execute more freight and help teams to level up and focus on relationships and complex problem solving and providing awesome service.
Thanks, Jesse. Today's conversation is really about building a brokerage of the future and what you could call a perfect or a touchless shipment or load. And so Jordan and the team over at Zengistics have spent a lot of time working to build the perfect tech stack in order to achieve that touchless load. Jordan, when you think about that concept, what does that really mean to you?
Yeah, for us, it really was a chase to be as scalable and efficient as possible in every aspect. So really stripping everything down to the studs for every department, every team, every function, and understanding the pain points that plague each one of those and understanding what are the value added activities that are taking place and what are the more manual tasks and the pain points that are a part of each one and how we can start to solve those problems with automation and technology and really get to a point where we're as scalable and efficient as possible and so that we then can take those gains and put them back towards our customers to really drive additional value with them because at the end of the day a customer shouldn't really ever be paying for our inefficiencies and that has been a thing in the industry for a while. So really trying to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, getting to those efficiencies. And Jordan, I know we see it constantly with our customers who are leaning into technology and looking for ways to drive efficiencies. When you think about this concept of getting to the brokerage of the future for Vooma and for your customers, what does that look like for you?
It really is trying to get to a place where, again, it's absolutely paramount that everything we do is done with intent. So every process, everything, every evaluation, every tech platform that we integrate with, every customer we work with, they're all done with intent to ensure that it's scaling and pushing us in the right direction and isn't just buying tech and applying tech just so we can say we have it. It's really to solve problems and drive impact.
When you think about kind of some of the challenges that led you there, that kind of brought you to this path, of knowing that you needed to automate, noting that you needed to drive efficiencies, and ultimately probably free up your team to focus more on customer experience. What got you here, and kind of what is the core of that strategy as you move forward?
Yeah, I think there's really when you talk about the tech stack in general, there's really two scored strategies that were paramount to have in place. The first is that flexibility and modularity of the tech stack. We can never be that partner that goes to a customer and tells them that they have to fall in line to our processes or shift their business to fit our needs. Rather, we need to be flexible and modular enough to be able to solve their problems. Now, we'll always provide guidance and best practices and solutions and observations as to how we could do something, but not every customer is in a position where they can make those changes. They may not have the tech infrastructure to do so. They may not have the desire to do so. And so for us, having the ability to really it doesn't matter what system you're leveraging, it doesn't matter what your process is, through the use of partners like Vooma and Turvo with open APIs and the flexibility to handle any form of communication, we can really bend and flex to solve the customer's needs rather than the other way around. And the second one is to ensure that, I mean, we all know that logistics is a fragmented industry, right? Everybody has their own system, their own platform, everybody has their own scheduling process. Everything is so fragmented. So the last thing in the world you want is your tech stack to be just as fragmented, right? So for us, one of the core things we had to have in place was a true system synchronization. Everything had to be in lockstep with each other every step of the way. So for us, that's a big piece of where Turvo came in. It was kind of the centerpiece of the tech stack, and we make sure that through the use of the open API and everything else, we can make sure that every system is flowing. The pipelines all go back to Turvo. So it all comes in and out of there, making sure that they're all perfectly in sync. If they're not, you're going to end up causing yourself more headaches and more problems than you probably ever solved with the tech in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. And Jesse, just kind of pitching this over to you, this concept of the brokerage of the future, a touchless load, which is what we're going to dig into a little bit more later. How many of your customers are you seeing that are looking for this experience to kind of move things to a more automated way? And how is AI driving that for Vooma's customers?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of seeing it across the industry now, where it's interesting. We started Vooma 2.5 years ago, and at that point, I think there was still kind of a lot of skepticism about like what AI could do for logistics, and it's pretty incredible to kind of see how far the industry has come so quickly. I think everyone kind of knows that it historically has taken a lot to be able to move freight, right? From quoting to scheduling to going to portals, calling carriers. And it was hard with traditional, like the sort of technology where you would have SaaS and a user that was like going in and putting data from one system into another, to be able to actually put tools in place to automate that. But now, like with AI, we have the ability to build coworkers that can sit alongside reps to go and do a lot of that tedious work. And we are generally seeing across the industry that people know that to build the brokerage of the future, they need their people to be focused on the things that are like uniquely human, which is building relationships and being more of a strategic partner to their shippers, and helping being a like supply chain advisor in how to develop the best transportation networks that they can, and being the person that's going to be there when things go wrong. But that in order to compete in the future, if you've got your team spending a bunch of their day putting data from one system into another, or going and clicking through portals, or answering phone calls that don't add value, that it's going to be hard to compete from a cost perspective, because there will be folks that are making those choices. So we're seeing a ton of momentum from both forward thinkers, but I think like Zengistics, who has honestly been thinking about this way for a long time, but we're seeing that folks generally across the industry are moving in that direction now.
Yeah. Kind of transitioning off of the non-negotiables and the core of that strategy, Jordan, you talked about having the APIs and the extensibility of kind of your main system of record, which for you guys is Turvo, and then having the tools to layer on top of that. What part of that foundation, like, did you absolutely need and able for the vision to work, the vision of the brokerage of the future, and just getting to a touchless load?
I think there's a couple ways to talk about that. I think the first one is really just every system, every partner that you work with. I think a lot of guys will say that they're a collaborative platform, right? And usually that just means that they're there to help you with integrations and mappings and such like that. But when you take a problem that Zengistics was facing, I can go to Turvo, I can go to Vooma, I can go to any of you guys, and there's never been a problem presented that wasn't run through the whole thing to find out if there's merit in it, right? Like, we have solved each one of those problems and talked about them extensively. And there's this idea that my problem is your problem, right? Like, I've sat weekend calls with the Vooma team just talking about theory crafting different ways that we can solve something. And even if it's not something that they're working on today, it's coming tomorrow. Like, when we first started working with Vooma, there wasn't a lot of the things that they're doing today, they weren't doing back then, but we were already talking about them. They were on a roadmap and everything was discussed extensively. And it wasn't just, hey, I have this feature, do you think it would help you? There's some of that, but a lot of it was, we were just talking through real problems that were plaguing everyday workloads, right? And so it was, how do we solve those? So having a true collaborative partners that allow us to tackle those problems in a way that isn't, again, kind of what we were talking about, flexibility with customers. I've never gone to Vooma and they've told me that we'll change your whole process to fit this, right? Instead, it's
right.
Forth collaboration to find out, well, is that the right way to do it? Maybe it's not. But if it is, then how can we solve the problem through AI agents or automation or leveraging other platforms? There's always that real collaborative feel to it. And without that back and forth with our tech partners, that a lot of this just wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's interesting. And thinking about, the relationships that you're talking about, so much of this goes back to your people and enabling your people. when you're building that framework, how do you decide what remains human centric and what do you automate? And how do you make those decisions?
The easiest way that we have always thought about it is when it's communication about something critical, mission critical, decision making, communication, anything like that has to come from our team. Our team is unbelievably talented and smart and execute at a very high level. So I don't want them spending their time building a load or logging into a portal to upload a document. It's when there's an exception on a load, when something goes wrong, when a game time decision needs to be made. I want them to be empowered with every piece of information they can as quickly as possible to make the best decision they can and communicate it in a way that's impactful, not just sending out an email with information, right? So I think that there's a lot of those tasks that can be automated, and we've automated at a very high clip. I think you can look at some of the most basic versions like order ingestion. I think if an organization right now isn't ingesting those orders at 92% automated, they probably should be reevaluating that, because 95, 96, 97% is incredibly achievable nowadays. So I think there's a lot of the ones that you can look at the function and look at the process and see that it's, I don't want to say busy work, but it's just not impactful work. And that's where you want to leverage AI. You want to leverage automations to help take care of those. But when you're talking about those mission critical conversations and decisions, that's where we want the team to be empowered and get involved and escalate to as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jesse, I'm sure you're seeing with your customers, and they're probably asking you, how do I know, from a consultative standpoint, how do I know what should be automated and what do I leave to the human? Where does AI come in and make mistakes, right? And so how do you help them balance kind of that strategy?
Yeah, I mean, what we see is that folks have different starting points often, and there's no like single way to run a brokerage as well, right? Like, there's different strategies that will work for different businesses. Um, we have some customers who are very interested in building an end-to-end touchless experience, really preserving a lot of the like customer relationship management, but believe that there's an opportunity for most things, from load building to scheduling to even sort of covering tracking fate, collecting documentation, that a lot of that work, at least when things are going right, can be automated end to end. We have others that like believe that they want humans still involved in some of these critical interactions. But what we see is like universally true is that people don't want their teams spending time, where they're paying somebody with a bachelor degree who's very intelligent, who wants a really meaningful, job and career, to be plugging data from one system into another, or to be doing work that is just kind of wasteful. And so we sort of support people on a transition, right? Depending on where they're at and what makes sense for them and their business and the way that they go to market. But there is this kind of like universal recognition that there's like some types of work that are just like that are not on their team's plate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when you think about the paradigm shift that's happening, and when you think about technology and people in the equation. And Jordan, I'm sure with the work that you guys have done, and you've you're on the path to automate almost all of kind of your order to cash process. What kind of cultural shift did it take with your team internally to get there? What was the change management like?
Yeah, I think there's a real misunderstanding, I think, to some, like when people talk about that touchless shipment or like true automation, I think sometimes it may feel like it's just apply technology and that's enough, when really it starts with the people. It starts with the culture. If you don't have a culture that embraces change and sometimes seeks out that desire to kind of challenge status quo and wants to see those impacts and those adjustments, then it's always an uphill battle. You can purchase a new software. I may think it's the greatest tool in the world, but if I go to the team and just say, here you go, use this, then for the length of that contract, every month we're having conversations around why it's not being adopted, why it's not being utilized, why the ROI is not there. And that's a cultural problem. Very rarely is that a tech problem. So when we wanted to encourage the team to kind of embrace that adjustment from their end. Like, I can sit with a team member and shadow them and watch how they do their job and ask questions as to why they're flipping between these 6 windows. But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are phenomenal at what they do, and they've optimized the hell out of what they're doing through keyboard shortcuts and everything else to do it as quickly as possible. So for me to go and say, I'm just going to apply this new thing that's going to change your day, they have to really want that change to some degree and be excited about it. Because if not, then it's just a disruption to their day, and that can be a hard sell at times. So the best way I've described it to people is you really know you've won when you have the what if employees. Where if I'm sitting down and we can take something like EDI, for example, we use it every single day. And I could say, for this EDI, I'm going to pull in and populate these 5 fields. If their response is, well, what if it also did that? Or what if over here it instead did this? That conversation is where you know you've really won, because then it's them bringing forth the opportunity that I don't need them to understand how that may work. I just want them to kind of dream up the situation and then let me and Jesse and the team go figure out how to bring it to life. But the minute they start bringing forward those ideas is really when the magic starts to happen. I like to think I've got a pretty good grasp on operations and what we do day in and day out, but I'll never know it as well as the people down in the trenches. And so when they're starting to point out those inefficiencies and they're starting to bring out the problems, that's when we can really enact change that excites them just as much as it does us.
Yeah, it sounds like curiosity is kind of at the core of that, right? Having the really curious employees who will lean in, embrace the tech, and also begin to innovate with the tech, which kind of leads us right into our transition. Jesse, I think you're going to show us kind of some real life examples of how employees can utilize tech like Turvo and Vooma together to drive some of these efficiencies. So I'll let you take over now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm happy to. What I'm going to do is provide an example of what it can look like to use the combination of Vooma and Turvo to drive efficiencies all the way from quoting to building loads to scheduling and even track and trace. And Samantha, I do want to shout out the Turvo team and your platform, because the integration that we have built with your platform is probably our most robust, because you guys have built such good API infrastructure to enable partners like us, and you make it very easy, and that is to the benefit of your customers, right? And so the workflow that I'll show you here is an example of that really tight integration.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's definitely one of our key value props, having the ability to go partner with best of breed and that open API. So appreciate you saying that.
Okay, so imagine I'm a account manager, customer-facing rep at a brokerage, and I'm going to start with the receipt of, say, in a spot scenario, I get an email quote request coming across here, and what you can see is that Vooma here is in Outlook on the right-hand side, and our AI here has automatically identified this quote request in the inbox. The AI has extracted out all of the key shipment information here. It is integrated with various pricing tools to be able to produce a rate, and it has drafted a response based on guidance that we've provided it. And the AI decided to auto respond here based on parameters that we set. The AI marked this as quoted. You can see that we tracked response time here, 48 seconds. And then it looks like the shipper responded in this scenario. So this is the response. And then the shipper said, we're good to move ahead at that rate, and sent across a load tender agreement. Now, this is a PDF, but Vooma supports really all formats: Excel spreadsheets, Word docs, screenshots, etc. And so you can see that it classified this as a new order, and we can then build that order and have that sent instantly into Turvo. So all of the key information here required to build a shipment in Turvo is automatically extracted. We are pulling out and associating these with existing location codes in Turvo, and I'm going to click through here, and of course that's going to fire up in the wrong browser. Give me 1 second. That's going to fire up, and we have a fully built load here in Turvo. And so now we have this load built and it needs to be scheduled. So I'm going to go first and update one of the dates here, because this is an order from 2025. So let's make this the 29th. It's a demo quirk. And now I can fire up the Vooma Chrome extension here on the right-hand side. So this has a very tight integration in with Turvo, and you can think of it as acting as an extension that sits on top to enable you to now perform workflows like scheduling that humans would otherwise have needed to do. And so I've got a 3-stop facility here. One of them is an email facility. So I'm going to go ahead and click request appointment. Now, full automation exists here, but for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to trigger this, but it can be triggered automatically on shipment creation. I've got an API connection directly here into OpenDoc, so I'm going to select a 2 p.m. here. And Vooma could even go out and schedule on Manhattan, for example, which is a portal where we would send a browser agent onto the portal that would navigate and click through and go and actually get an appointment time. That's all live. These are live connections, so I can't actually demonstrate this, but the AI will go out and book that appointment and then confirm those times back in the TMS. But you could have a scenario here like we've sent this email and you can see here that the AI has taken control of my inbox here. So it has sent an email to this facility. The facility has responded in this case and actually said that the PO isn't in the system. So this commonly happens. And so the AI here has actually reached out to me, the operator, over Teams and said, hey, can you confirm it's the correct PO number? And maybe it was a typo. It's actually 43. I'm going to fire that back to the agent. The agent will then take that information, reach back out to the facility. So giving you a sense of what it looks like for the AI to collaborate with the person. And we'll let that run through here. And so let's assume this will come and get appointed. And now imagine we've covered the load and we want to track it. So I can come into Turvo here and I'll add a carrier to the load. We've got Daryl back here. And then we'll put a driver on this, which is Harold. And Vooma is integrated with Turvo's exception queues to be able to trigger track and trace calls in different scenarios. I'm going to show what this looks like to just manually trigger a check call here to Harold. So what I'll do here is I'll fire this off and I'm going to now pretend to be the driver who will receive a call. Jesse speaking.
Hey, Jesse, this is Ashley from Vooma Transportation. We're working on that load from Louisville to Grand Rapids, checking in to see how it's progressing.
Yeah, everything's on track. We're about 3 hours outside of Grand Rapids now and on time for delivery.
Got it. Thanks for the update, Jesse.
Yeah, no problem. So as we all know, every shipment is always on time and on track for delivery. But what we can see here is that what will have just happened is that the AI agent will have executed an SOP here defined in natural language that called the driver, emailed the dispatcher, and if everything was on track, then would have updated Turvo and sent an email out to the customer. So if I come into this shipment, I believe it was this one, or perhaps this one. Let's see. You can see that we've updated that comment that the driver is on track, approximately 3 hours away, and we'll have sent an email out just then to the customer, letting them know that this shipment is en route and 3 hours away. So it gives you a sense for from all the way from quote to tracking. There's more that we support folks with, a very tight integration that allows us to move closer to delivering that touchless load.
Very cool. Thanks for showing us that. Jordan, how much of that functionality is your team using today, and where are you seeing some of the early success?
Almost all of it. And I think like even as I kind of mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, where we were talking about like the defragmentation of tech and like how you ensure that everything can be operated without having to go into all these different portals. Like I want to stress to everybody that's watching right now, like watching Jesse go through that, that's what it looks like in real time. Like that's how we leverage the system. When you go to schedule, we don't have to go open up all these different portals and windows. Like it is all there inside of our existing frame. So it takes so much out of the necessary like needed clicks to be able to operate. And although Jesse was showing some of those like manual triggers, we don't have to do that frequently. Like we get involved during escalations when something goes wrong, when the AI agent can't parse information, or when a driver says not going to make it, right? And that's when the team then gets escalated to, and the impact decision making then takes place. But that's why the touchless shipment works. It's because we embrace the technology in a way that we understand. Unless we get escalated to, it's running the way it should. And we've tested extensively, and we have all the confidence in the world that between Turvo and Vooma and everybody that it's going to function, it's going to run the way it needs to. And when it doesn't, and something does go wrong, because naturally it's going to happen, it's logistics, something's going to break somewhere. We know that the team's going to get escalated to properly and quickly. And sometimes it's faster than it would have been if we just had a task board that someone has a notification check every 4 hours. The AI is going to let me know in 30 seconds, right? So it's so much better, and it really does operate the way it was demoed.
Yeah, it really helps you increase your pace of business, which is nice. Kind of looking back, so we've now kind of talked about how you went down the journey, or kind of the before, the during, the after. Jesse's shown us a live example. When you think about just looking back on where you are now, you guys have gotten to a point where you do have the ability to really unlock the perfect shipment, right? Without much human touch outside of building those relationships with your customers, which is awesome. But what lessons have you learned along the way?
Yeah, the biggest, there's so many. We could have a whole webinar on just things that we've learned through this journey.
Maybe top 2 or 3.
I think the biggest one that, especially for anybody who's either on this journey or about to embark on this or in it right now, don't boil the ocean. I've spent half my career doing it, right? It makes everything so much more difficult. When you think of the touchless shipment, it's a lot to tackle all at once. Identify those areas of pain points and the ones that you can kind of, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, and don't get plagued by the what doesn't work. I think so frequently I can sit in a meeting, and I've met with every person I've ever talked to at some point in my career. I can provide an example or scenario on how we could solve a problem, and everybody's quick to identify the one reason why it doesn't work. And that sometimes can derail the entire process, because we oftentimes want to solve 100% of the problem, when sometimes solving 80% of the problem is going to get you leaps and bounds further than the competition and everybody else, right? So don't get caught up in trying to solve 100% every time, and definitely don't get derailed by the one reason that it doesn't work, because that means that there's probably 99 other reasons why it does work. So focus on the wins and focus on where you can get those efficiency gains and those things over the line. Don't get dragged down by how unique your customers are, or how unique your process is, or all the uniqueness of what we're doing, because chances are there's a lot that you can solve still.
Yeah, it's like, don't get mired down in perfection. Solve for where you get the wins and move forward. Which I was going to ask you about what pitfalls to avoid, but I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, don't get hung up on perfection, and solve for what you can, and don't get stuck on the things that are not working.
So what doesn't work today. Vooma's, again, perfect example. Like day one working with Vooma, there was a lot that they weren't ready to do that today they've now solved at an unbelievable rate. So even though you can't solve it today and you only get 60% there, doesn't mean that 40% is not coming in the next 2 weeks. Maybe it's a year, but it doesn't mean it's not coming. And so keeping an eye on those things and kind of circling back every once in a while, keeping that communication up with the partners, like those things will get solved. It's just a matter of time.
There is so, I mean, you're making me think a little bit bigger outside of our script. So I might catch you a little bit off guard here, but I think you can roll with it. there's so much new tech out there, right? And I know you've talked about kind of the TMS and for you guys, Turvo being the backbone and having the open APIs. That's great. But how do you even go to market and choose the right technology? I mean, for other people who are listening, how do you choose and how do you get your tech stack down to one or two key partners off your TMS versus there's so many options and there's something new every day?
This is a great question. I think, again, this is actually going to be a testament to Turvo to some degree. Like, you can open the integration hub, and the amount of integrations you guys have ready to launch right now is huge, right? So just even on that alone, there's so many options. But really, when you go to market and you're really evaluating all these tech partners, I think the biggest problem that you would run into is if you didn't know with 100% conviction what you were trying to solve when evaluating those partners. Again, buying tech just to buy tech because everybody says tech is what you're supposed to be doing is probably the most dangerous game you can play, because you're just going to end up spending a lot of money and burning a lot of calories on things that aren't going to lead anywhere because you don't necessarily have that complete conviction on what you're trying to solve. So I think it all starts kind of the way I alluded to in the beginning. You have to kind of strip it down to the studs and understand the what you're doing day in and day out, the how you're doing it, and more importantly, the why you're doing those things in the first place. Because tech can't solve bad processes. Tech can't solve bad data. Tech can make them worse in some cases, right? But when you have a true understanding of what you're trying to solve and you can approach it from that point, then the evaluation almost becomes more about the people on the other side of the call, right? Like the working with the Jessies, working with his engineering team, like those guys are a delight to work with. And that becomes a bigger selling point than just they use AI, right? If I just was searching for AI, there's tons of options. But there's a very big difference between a Vooma team that's using AI and maybe some others that I've gone to market and evaluated, right? But I think it oftentimes comes down to that relationship and that collaboration. And you can have a conversation with any tech company and in the first 3 minutes understand whether or not they're just a tech company or they're someone who's really trying to solve your problems, not just solve industry problems, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think understanding the problems is so important. And we have customers, we're talking to customers every day and prospects who are asking, do you have AI? And we explain through our open API and partners like Vooma, we have a great, the ability to layer AI on top of any of your workflows. But to your point, a lot of those prospects don't know what they're asking for. They don't understand what they're trying to solve. So really understanding, and I like strip it down to the studs, like really get under the hood and understand what you're trying to solve. I think, Jesse, you showed some great examples of the exact workflows that you're solving for the Zen team. How many times are you consulting with customers where they don't really understand what it is they're trying to solve?
Sorry, Samantha, I was just reading a question in the chat and you caught me at the one moment where I was distracted reading
it's okay.
the Q&A.
It's okay.
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just asking, how many customers are coming to you and asking for AI without really having a clear understanding of what workflows and what business problems they're trying to solve?
When that does happen, the like naive thing is you get excited because you're like, wow, there's an opportunity, but then it's sort of a yellow flag because usually it means that somebody is sort of acting out of like FOMO and a sense of like, hey, show me, and that tends to be not the best scenario. I mean, I think what Jordan is saying is super real, which is, and we sort of believe this, like AI is an incredible technology that allows us to solve some problems that were previously very hard to solve. But if you're not starting with like, what is the actual, like the use case here? What is the business case for solving this? Are we actually moving the needle on that and making sure that we're like getting that ROI? If you don't do that, you're going to find yourself in a scenario where you've burnt a lot of time, headspace, credibility with your team in rolling things out. And so I think like one of the things that's very special about the Zengistics team that is, I think, just clear from hearing you talk, Jordan, is that you guys have decided to make implementing technology a core capability. Not necessarily having to build it, but like you have got very good at knowing how to buy and implement technology to realize ROI. And even the best vendors who are going to show up and like collaborate and be there for you, like they can't help actually get you the full way there. And so for us, like one of the things that, we really love these partnerships where we know that somebody has like, it's clear that they're really thinking about it and they're evaluating and that they're going to like see that it's sort of a journey, and that they know how to get their teams on board and get them through this sort of like change management process. All of that stuff is super critical. And it's like maybe one of the things that I think is the most important for brokers to like really think about is like, okay, I'm really good at moving freight, but I don't need to necessarily be the most tech forward, but I do need to be very good at identifying problems and solving them through, technology where that's the right tool.
It's a great answer, even though you weren't paying attention to the question initially.
Sorry.
All good. I'm just teasing. I think we're kind of at a point where it makes sense to open this up to the audience and bring in some of their questions, and several have come through on chat. I'll start with the first one, and Jesse, this one's for you. So assuming the driver doesn't pick up the phone, are there settings or fail-safes added, i.e. text functionality, MacroPoint, or ELD connection to make sure the load is ultimately tracked and not looked over by a non-answer?
Yeah. So there's a lot of choices here. And just to like very quickly, part of the power here of the way that these agents can define in natural language what happens. So here we've called the driver. If they don't pick up, if the phone went to voicemail or no one answered the phone, then we're going to go and email the driver. That could be a email, it could be a text message. All of those are just tools that we can give the AI access to be able to achieve that task. The other thing that I think somebody mentioned in the chat was that Turvo has a very robust exception management and alerting system that is actually quite unique in that a lot of those alerts can also trigger outreach, for example. And often we will have customers that will implement this where, the default is to not call the driver, but if for whatever reason they don't have tracking through the Turvo app or it's failed through MacroPoint and you haven't got a ping in 2 hours, then use that to trigger the call. Call them, email them, wait 20 minutes, try again. If you don't hear anything, escalate up through Teams or even a phone call to the rep on the load so that they can go and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, that tree that Jesse was showing is one of the things that excited me most when we were kind of getting to that point, because don't look at that tree and think that that's like a predefined Vooma thing that has to be followed every time. Like they've built that as kind of like a starting point, but we oftentimes will go back to Jesse and the team and ask simple questions of like exactly like the question in chat where it was like, well, what happens if the call's not answered? What happens if it rings for 6 minutes and there's no voicemail for it to go to? Like you can start to poke holes in that process. And every time I poke a hole in a process, Jesse just fills it with an automation, right? Or fills it with an exception, fills it with communication back to the team. And so we really get to define that flow, even if you don't have the technical expertise to understand like what the natural language is going to do or how the data flows. It doesn't matter because you get to just sit in front of Jesse's team and just start walking them through the process, and they kind of build it out modularly for you. And then as you start poking holes, they just start filling them. And so it really is something that if the AI model scares you because you don't know what it's going to do, just know that those always can be escalated back to your team and over communicated if you really wanted to. I don't suggest it, but you can be pinged every time a process goes through. So like there really is all the flexibility in the world and so many safeguards. Like the safeguards don't exist. It's probably because you didn't think of them, right? Or didn't ask the question, because they can be built by Vooma.
Got it. Jesse, you hit on something which was Turvo's exception management. And I don't know today, I think there's plans in the future for you guys to think about using exception management, layering the AI on. Is that something that we're going to be doing with Zen? Have you guys thought about how to use Turvo's exception? And we call it Workbench at Turvo. We actually are really proud of it because our customers love it. It gives our customers the ability to not have to go into their look at shipments one by one. They can start with just going to Workbench and working through those exceptions first. That's where they can start their day. So I know you kind of talked about in rehearsal, there's plans to use our exception management. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's getting like built as we speak, which is all of those exceptions so like in a tracking scenario, if the Turvo app has stopped tracking for 2 hours, that actually then fires off to an agent, for example. Those can be set programmatically, so like on a schedule as well. But a lot of times, if everything's on track, the point here is to like not go and harass a driver often, right? And so being able to like have intelligence around when to introduce AI to do work is a lot of the key to rolling this stuff out really successfully, so that like your interactions with your stakeholders, especially carriers, are like quality ones that make sense and are not sort of bombarding them with a spray and pray approach.
Makes sense. And that's a good catalyst for our next question, which is for you, Jordan, that came from the audience. How do you prep your team to handle carriers who are opposed to the use of AI?
This is a great question, because it's not even just a carrier thing. I think there's a level of distrust of AI or skepticism around AI across the world, let alone just our industry. But I think it really comes down to that communication and the way that it's handled in those setups, right? Like, we go back to our carriers and have very transparent conversations with them about how this is going to flow and how this works. And if they draw that line in the sand and they say absolutely not, there might be a question as to whether or not they're even a great partner for us long term then. Because it's not that they're running everything through AI. It's not that every piece of communication, every rate, and every negotiation, like, those happen, but that is not everything that's going on. So I think it's really just having a very transparent conversation with your partners and letting them know, here's how we leverage it, here's why we're doing it this way, and here's the result that we're aiming for. And if there's a massive disconnect there, then it becomes an evaluation from there. But we've never had a carrier that after those conversations has left the conversation wildly opposed to our use of AI. I think too many individuals have been scarred by inappropriate use of AI, and I think that's completely fair. I think sometimes people get excited about AI and it's a buzzword, and Jesse kind of mentioned like the FOMO, so they just start applying it everywhere and they think it's going to save time, and it ends up causing more headaches. It damages relationships. Like, those are all very real concerns, but that comes back to your intent when using the technology. The technology is only as good as you make it, right? I can put it into everything and it's probably not going to solve much, but it's being very intent with what you're doing and making sure that it's appropriately applied.
Thanks for that, Jordan. I've got one more question here from the audience, and this one's to you, Jesse. What's the time game when using an AI agent compared to manual tasking?
Yeah. The answer is it's going to vary like a lot based on the workflow. But, you know, for example, we were talking with the like Zengistics teams about the like time savings that scheduling automation has provided, and it's in the order of 75 to 80% time savings. You know, like, there's scenarios where it can be even much more. Like, you know, Jordan, I remember in the early days when you guys had some Excel spreadsheets that were 300 lines long across 100 orders, with each line being a different PO, and that stuff, you know, you could be sitting there for like hours trying to get that into the system, and we were able to kind of rip through that in 3 minutes, and the savings could be, you know, like much more dramatic. But I do think like it's important to set expectations that the answer is not like zero, right? Like, these are like amplifiers of human productivity, but they don't replace work. There's usually still like auditing, checking, managing of exceptions, you know, but, you know, you can sort of think about most workflows being in that kind of 75% range.
Awesome. Well, that was the last question that's come in from the audience so far. To kind of round us out, I mean, Jordan, we started with, we're looking at the brokerage of the future and a touchless shipment. Do you feel like you guys have achieved that touchless shipment, or do you have lots more work to go and do?
It's a never-ending process. There's always improvements to be made. There's always additional things to tackle. But the idea of the touchless shipment has been achieved. I mean, we have chunks of our business that now run with exceptions excluded, right, when things go wrong. But if everything runs the way it's supposed to, a touchless shipment is running today. It's very real. Everything from ingesting to scheduling to uploading to communicating to tracking to closing to invoicing, it's all automated. And so the idea is there, and it's functional, and it's real, and we are actually doing it. Maybe not at the clip that we want, but I think everybody knows that the goal is never to be a company of one person running a tech stack that just runs all this business perpetually, right? Like,
Right.
We always need those humans, and we always need those touch points there. But the idea, are we done? Absolutely not. There's always more to do, but we're in a damn good spot.
Well, it's awesome to see what you guys have achieved and the success. For those of you who have hung out with us for the full 45 minutes, we appreciate you listening. There will be a recording posted, and we'll share the links for everybody that was attended today so that you have access to that recording. Jordan, Jesse, if people want to find you, and Jordan, I'll start with you, where can folks find you and Zengistics?
LinkedIn is the easiest place to connect with me if you ever want to, and then Zengistics, just Google it. We're there.
All right. Jesse?
Yeah, follow me and Vooma on LinkedIn, and if it makes sense to have a conversation, reach out to me directly, or we're at vooma.com, vooma.com.
Thanks. And then for us, you can find us at turvo.com. Again, we'll share the link to the recording. Thanks for everybody that joined today, and that's a wrap.
Thanks so much.